Donald Trump's pick for Treasury Secretary has close ties to Southern California.
As Steve Mnuchin made a fortune on Wall Street, then headed to Hollywood to bankroll blockbuster films.
Yeah, but critics are quick to point out he also cashed in big time on the misery of others when the housing market collapsed here in 2008. KCAL9 political reporter Dave Bryan's been looking into his background. You talked to both critics and supporters, Dave.
That's right, and he's had certainly his successes financially, but failures as well. Not unusual for people that are in the big money business. Stephen Mnuchin has a Wall Street background, but his experiences ultimately brought him to Hollywood, where he bankrolled some of the most successful films of this generation. But like many money men, he's had his share of failures and controversy as well. Treasury Secretary nominee Stephen Mnuchin has deep roots in California, roots in housing, and some controversy.
He's a psychotic antisocial freak. What? Careful.
And roots in Hollywood movies, smash hit movies in some cases, like Suicide Squad. Released in August, it grossed nearly $750 million at last count. After working as a mortgage bond trader for Goldman Sachs in New York for 17 years, Mnuchin eventually moved west to California, where he ultimately became a financial backer for a string of hit movies, including Mad Max: Fury Road. But like many in Hollywood, he also had his failures, including a studio that went bust after critics charged Mnuchin pulled his funding out. Variety managing editor Ted Johnson says that left a trail of bad feelings on the part of some others who tried to save the studio.
He was an investor in Relativity, even served for a while as its co-chairman, and got out of it just a couple months before Relativity actually declared bankruptcy. And that in itself was a bit of a controversy, and they ended up getting paid out earlier than other investors. That was a source of tension within the bankruptcy proceedings.
But Mnuchin's biggest controversy stems from the 2008 housing collapse and the Great Recession that followed. In 2009, Mnuchin led a group of investors who bought a troubled bank based in California and engaged primarily in housing mortgages that was on the verge of collapse, triggering protests across Southern California and leaving many account holders big losers.
We lost $160,000, and this was for my kids' education fund.
I lost $130,000 in 2 weeks.
$625,000.
Mnuchin renamed the bank One West, and he was reportedly the chairman of One West in 2011 when the Federal Office of Thrift Supervision issued a consent order which concluded the review uncovered unsafe and unsound practices, violations of law, and foreclosure processes geared towards speed and quantity instead of quality and accuracy. Thousands of homeowners lost their homes to foreclosure.
The main way in which the bank interacted with working class families in California was through.
Kevin Stein is with the California Reinvestment Coalition, one of two nonprofits which filed this complaint with the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, claiming that One West engaged in housing discrimination and rushed homeowners into foreclosure. Senator Elizabeth Warren says Trump's nomination of Stephen Mnuchin to be the next Treasury Secretary is a betrayal of his working class supporters.
He promised that he was going to run this government for the American people and not for Wall Street. And what he's just done is he's just put a Wall Streeter in charge of the Treasury, and not just a random one, a guy who actually helped package all of those toxic mortgages, a guy who bought a bank that made its fortune by squeezing people hard on foreclosure. That's the person who's going to be the chief economic officer of the United States.
But California Republican National Committee member Sean Steele says it's the height of hypocrisy to blame Mnuchin for the national recession, a man who has conducted his business honestly and above board.
He had business successes and business failures. That's what happens to capitalists. Some things work, some things don't work. But to blame him on the economic crisis that was created by the Wall Street community and their friends starting in the Clinton administration. The first one is the height of hypocrisy. Secondly, Mnuchin himself's not even a Republican. Last time I checked, he was a declined estate. His wife is a registered Democrat. He's a true independent, the kind of person that Donald Trump is attracting.
Now, Mnuchin eventually brought One West Bank back to life and sold the bank for nearly $3.5 billion in 2015, a substantial profit from the initial investment back in 2009 on a very risky bank. Lena?